Fire Emblem Awakening is a cool game, and I'm gonna talk about it until I can't talk about it anymore. So yeah, the game is probably, I don't know the exact release date, but it's close to 4, maybe 5 years old now. And when I think about it, I didn't get it on launch, probably a year after, so I mean I'm not like an early adopter. But it's a great game, and despite having played it for 3 to 4 years, depending on when it came out exactly, I'm still able to think about it and talk about it all the time. And I say play because it's something I regularly played ever since I first got it, because it's a really good game. And it's like an endless treasure trove. I can talk about it whenever and for however long I need to. So I thought I was just going to do it. I'm going to turn on a microphone. I'm going to start talking about it because I talk about it a lot, and I might as well do something with it. So I think the game really, it's just this perfect storm of everything, where it doesn't. And this is the thing, where it doesn't do everything it tries to do perfectly, but because it does a lot of really interesting things all in one package, it makes a really, really unique experience. You know, in terms of tactical role-playing games, oh, right, that's what it is. Turn-based. It's not the best. It really isn't. The game is, even on the hardest difficulty, can be pushed. Mechanics in the game can be abused to make this game incredibly easy. You know, you can, with the right circumstances, knowing what you're doing, you can beat this game incredibly easy on the highest difficulty with very little effort. And there's a lot of really bad things with this game, like how reinforcements work. You know, reinforcements spawn without any warning of where they're going to spawn, and they can attack the same turn they spawn, so they can spawn right behind you and kill all your guys, and then that's it. You know, you lost all of that progress that, you know, could have taken you 20 minutes, because despite being easy, just the nature of how the game is set up, the levels still take time to complete. But despite that, I think that the characters are what make this game so good. And I think this applies to the entire Fire Emblem franchise. Fire Emblem has just really good characters throughout all of them, throughout the entire series. But I think Awakening specifically really shines is how they changed, you know, how the support conversations in this game specifically are, and just the circumstances of the story, which we'll talk about. But like Fire Emblem, you know, I've been replaying Shadow Dragon, and Shadow Dragon is considered by many to be one of the weakest entries in the franchise, and I agree with that. I don't think it's the best, but it's not the worst by, well, yeah, I mean, it's probably the worst in the Fire Emblem franchise. That doesn't mean it's a bad game, but it's probably the worst. And the reason is that none of the characters get any time to develop whatsoever, other than Marth, who's the main character, and some side characters who are, and basically even, you know, having one character get development is sometimes enough to carry an entire game. But Martha as a character isn't all that interesting. If everybody else was given development, then the game would be really good, because Marth is interesting, just not interesting enough to carry a whole game on his back. But despite that, the game uses really cool, just interesting character designs to carry, you know, to make up for the slack of writing, basically. You can still get really attached to these characters just because they all look really unique and cool, which is impressive because this game throws like 50 characters. No joke, I'm chapter 16, I think, and I already have like 50 characters in my army. You know, they throw a whole bunch of axe guys at you. Like, they throw in one chapter, they throw 7 new units at you at a time. It's crazy, and that's because, you know, there's a permadeath mechanic in the game. Very few people play by it, but this game was definitely designed with that in mind, where people, you know, early on in the game, you'd make mistakes and lose a lot of characters, so you would need all of these characters to come in and fill the blanks. But, you know, if you play how most people play, where you reset every death, you just get this huge backlog of characters that you will never use, and you have no incentive to use, because, I mean, they have no personality. You know, they'll never change. They're just what they are. And, you know, Awakening, and other games have support conversations. But again, I think Awakening, it really incentivizes you to get all the support conversations because of the child mechanic and, you know, marriage. When two characters get high enough support, they get married, and then they have a kid, and then the kid becomes a playable character. And this mechanic incentivizes you to learn basically everything about the characters, which, I mean, you can technically skip through them if that's your kind of thing, but it's a really cool way where it's optional. They never, throughout the main, you can play throughout the entire game without getting a single child unit outside of Lucina, because Lucina is required for the story. But because Lucina is required for the story and she teaches you about it, it's interesting. Like, look, these characters that I've been using can have kids, that's cool. So then it incentivizes you to, like, use not only characters that you've already used in weirder scenarios, like, I want to marry this character with this character's a healer, this character is, somebody who is also, maybe not the frailest, doesn't need to get healed very often. I normally keep them with potions or whatnot, but I'll make these two fight together, so they can get married and have a kid. But not only, it also makes you want to use characters that you wouldn't use before. I remember in my first playthrough, I was on, I just wanted to see, I wanted to make sure I had all the characters, and I found out Muriel, who's one of the first units you get, has a kid. And Muriel, I mean, honestly isn't an awful character, but she's also just not very interesting compared to the other characters you are given at the time. And seeing how your character, your player character, is also a mage, it doesn't really make you want to use her, who's just kind of a generic, not very interesting mage. But, it really is like, whoa, she has a son, so I started using her, and then, in turn, I started learning more about her, so this character that I would have never touched otherwise, and I would have never known anything about, and would have probably just forgotten about, has now become someone who I think is interesting. I'm not going to sit here and say she's the best character in the game, but she's not awful either. She's an interesting character, and her dynamics with her son and whoever she marries is interesting to read, and it's interesting to learn about her. And that's something else, is that it's interesting being able to see these characters in two very different scenarios, being spouses and like lively human beings, and then being parents. It lets you learn a lot more about the characters. It gives two very different sides, and it helps to flesh out the characters in ways that a lot of other games either can't do or don't do. Most just can't do with the scenario, and the game, that's fine. And the child units, the kids are all really interesting, not only because through the events of the story, these kids have come back from a future in which the world is destroyed, where their parents' mission failed. So that in itself, the kids aren't technically the kids of this. Basically, they hop realities, right? It's not necessarily time travel. It's like not multiple universes. It's that theory where they basically hopped from one bubble to the bubble that you're playing in. But in their bubble, the group of characters you control failed their mission and the world ended. So, and the reason this is really interesting is because, we know that they came from this horrible, just apocalyptic hellhole, and they come to this world and they've never really experienced a world the way it is. They, some of the coolest support conversations, in my opinion, are Lucina's with her mom. One of it is, Lucina is built up to be this stoic leader. She's the leader of her country after, her father died. So, and in this apocalyptic scenario, so she'd have to be strong to be able to lead her people. And then when she comes back to a time period that has a society where there's peace and not everything is dead, she just goes to a village and she goes shopping, and she's never been able to do that before. And it's this it's this eye-opening experience. It's really cool to see this character, because it's such a trivial thing, being able to go shopping or just being alive in a normal society that we know. It's very cool. And all of the children are like that. I use Lucina specifically because, again, she was the only one that's forced on you, but it's really cool because at first it seems kind of shallow because, and again, despite all the praise I'm giving, this game doesn't have novels worth of dialogue to read through. A lot of the dialogue exchanges are only a couple paragraphs, but I think it's written well enough to get the point across really well and to really flesh out these characters. It also really helps that basically every character can talk to every other character. So if you And again, it's the thing where the more you use a character, the more you get to know about them. So like, all of the characters in this game, when you first meet them, very much feel like caricatures. They have one personality trait that defines everything about them. But because everybody's like that, the more you put them against each other, they foil each other really well. And by reading, basically by having these two, imagine, it's like having blue and yellow. Blue is blue and yellow is yellow, but when you put them together, it mixes into green. You have one character that's a womanizer and one character who is, obsessive about naming weapons. You put them together, and despite being caricatures, they build off each other really nicely, and they build into much more than just caricatures. They become actual characters, and it's really cool. And that's why, in my opinion, this game is so good. It's the characters, and it has a huge, pretty big roster of characters. I want to say, probably 30. I don't know. I could be completely off and then miss my point, but this game at least has 30 really good characters that are worth investing and learning about, which is impressive. Most things can't say that they have 30 characters that are worth investing emotions into and learning about. Yeah, that's it actually.